For all the students out there, EduVenture is aimed at empowering young people to pursue careers with a social impact. And we've been running this webinar series throughout the summer to help you guys connect with people in all different careers. So today we're going to be talking about social enterprises and social mobility charity, which is going to be really exciting. But we've done a range of things from journalism to working abroad. And we are now setting up EduVenture societies at lots of different universities around the UK. So I am Isla, and I run the EduVenture Society at the University of Exeter. But there are also societies being set up at Bristol and Durham and Imperial College London. So keep an eye out if you're at any of those universities when you go back in the next few weeks. And I'm sure you'll see some stuff on all of the pages at university to try and get involved with some more of those events. And we have partnered with GoToCo China on these webinars, and they are an amazing option for internships to do your TEFL abroad, which is your teaching English as a foreign language qualification. And it's just a great opportunity to go to China, experience a really different culture and grow your leadership skills and your personal confidence. I went last year, I went for 2 months. It was amazing. And despite the pandemic, obviously this summer wasn't possible, but their applications for 2021 are open. So if you want to do a really different internship that's going to make your CV look really unusual, I would massively recommend them. And it's a great amount of fun. And you can find all of their information. I expect we'll pop it in the chat towards the end. So if I could please get you both to introduce yourself, maybe starting with Joyce, and just let us know what you currently do, that would be amazing.
Sure. So hello everyone. I'm really delighted to be able to share my career experience with you. My name is Joyce. I am the Managing Director at Insight Education. I've also co-founded a charity in 2018 by the name of Insight Outreach. And I don't know if you want to know anything more, but what it is that we help students through career, through academic mentoring methods, plan their entry into universities and the top universities at that. So we run an Oxbridge mentoring program. It's not that the end goal is Oxford or Cambridge, it's more the method of actually achieving the skills in order to get selected for the top universities. So that's what I do worldwide, and I've transferred all my knowledge and systems and processes to our charity.
Amazing, thank you. And Karen, what do you do?
Hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me today. So my name's Karen Arthur. I am a fashion designer and a sewing tutor. I was a teacher for 28 years. I was a pastoral leader, so I started teaching dance. My degree is in performing arts, and then I moved up through to become a pastoral leader, and I ended up being the head of house in a boys' school. I am now freelance. I teach people how to sew. I make bespoke clothing for women. I champion wearing clothes to make you feel good, called Wear You're Happy. The links between fashion, making conscious clothing choices, and good mental well-being. And I am currently talking about menopause and about diversifying menopause. So I run something called Menopause Whilst Black, which is basically about obviously diversifying the menopause landscape. And I was a co-founder of Craft Moves, which was a social enterprise to link London's lonely commuters using craft and creativity. Obviously that is on kind of a little bit of a hiatus, but yeah, so I do lots of different things. I'm a fan of doing what makes you feel good.
It's a really lovely way to put it. So I think for students, what we want to know is how you guys got to where you are now, because obviously you've gone through lots of different jobs and roles before you really found what you wanted to focus on the most. So what did you study at university, and then what was the first step after you left that sort of led you to where you are now? Joyce, if you could please start us off.
Yes, it wasn't a conscious decision at the state when I graduated. Well, I studied history at Oxford University and had 3 wonderful years there. And on graduation, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but my parents were keen that I started earning my keep, and also looking for a job which was, well, I guess, consistent. So I didn't really have the option of going abroad or taking a year out. I had to focus on getting into work quite quickly. So I signed up with a few temping agencies, actually. So my route into the UK civil service was through that. So I did some long-term temping work in a National Probation Directorate and the Home Office. And whilst I was there, I became aware of opportunities to actually make my job permanent. So that's the route I took. In terms of where I was then to where I was now, so here it is. So during my civil service career, I chose to do a master's in public policy and management at Birkbeck University, which allowed me to work full-time and also study part-time. And that was my dissertation focused on educational systems and comparing our UK system and learning from systems abroad. So I found that absolutely fascinating. And it was probably telling at that point in time that my future direction was going to be education orientated. And then when I was in my day job, my director did know that I applied to Oxford, and he had a son who wanted some advice on his personal statement. So very informally, I just offered my advice and experience, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed having the direct and personal impact on somebody's academic and personal development, and really it started from there. Alongside working in the civil service, I started up my company in 2006, and working with local schools, and then it grew international, and I guess the rest is history. I stuck it out in the day job for a period of time. Actually, I stuck it out for probably 10 years before I decided to kind of leave and go full time pursuing insight education. So that's the route to where I am now. And really, since leaving the day job, I really haven't looked back. It took a lot of courage and strength to take that leap of faith, but yeah, I'm glad I did.
But then you both do things like this that have a massive positive impact on communities, and that must be really special to get to see how you're influencing people. So it sounds amazing. Like, I've been looking at both of your work and it's very exciting to see. So Karen, where were you? Did you go to university? Did you study there? And then what did you study, if you did? And then sort of what was your path like? Because I know you said you did teaching before you went into running your own company.
Yeah, so I was brought up with my parents are from Barbados, and both of I was brought up in Oxfordshire, as it goes, in a small town called Banbury. And my father was very keen for me to become a doctor, which still makes me laugh because it's just no. But my parents divorced around the time that I was looking at my options. So I was able to completely do what I wanted to do. When I told I love dancing, and when I told my mother that I wanted to do a performing arts degree, which my art teacher had suggested, she was like, just do what you love. I just want you to be happy. So I went to Leicester Poly at the time, and I did a performing arts degree. I focused on dance. I played the piano and I'd done some drama as well, so I wanted to do everything. And then after I finished my degree, I was kind of floundering a bit, if I'm honest. My best friend was a high flyer and she'd gone off to Jamaica. She'd got a scholarship at the Jamaica School of Dance. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I had a stint, I went on a dole, which is what you call universal credit these days. And I did a stint in a fashion retail shop, which I absolutely hated. And then they were advertising for a dance teacher in a Quaker school, in a tiny village 7 miles from where I lived. And the pay was hardly anything, but they covered your board and lodging. And it was near my mum. So I went there. And I mean, my salary was pitiful. But what happened, because it was a private school, it was a private Quaker school, the music teacher, this is a really sad story, by the way, the music teacher passed away. And because it was a private school, they could do what they liked at the time. So they changed all the music lessons into dance lessons and my pay tripled. And I loved it. And so at the end of that, it was a year's contract. At the end of that, I thought, oh, I should probably get some kind of qualification in teaching. You never know. So I went and did my postgrad and then went into teaching. And it just... it was almost like, I may as well do this. I may as well do this. And I still love, although I don't do it anymore, loved teaching. And I loved teaching dance because these were the kids who got to be free outside of the classroom. And often the children who loved dance were kids who weren't necessarily doing very well academically. And dance was the only lesson that they were coming to. So I did that. And then I moved up. I taught a bit of drama and I became head of Key Stage 3 Performing Arts. And in all the schools I worked in a mixed school, a girls' school, and then a boys' school. I always had leaders, head teachers who were very champion the performing arts, basically. But when I decided to move across to pastoral education. So I became a head of year. And then, as I say, I ended up as a head of house in a boys' school, which I loved. But education is flawed. The education system in the UK is flawed, just telling you that now. So it became more and more stressful. And I became ill, mentally ill. And in the end, I had a breakthrough, I call it, because I had some time off work and I was trying to get better to go back to work. And it was only after I just had this kind of epiphany, which was, actually, I just need to get better. I'm not going back to work. And that was a breakthrough because I never thought I'd leave teaching. I thought I had always sewn. I'd been sewing since I was 15. My mother had taught me to sew. It was something I did. It was cathartic. It was something I did to wind down after work or at the weekend. So I thought I'd, be a teacher forever and then retire and then wait for my grandkids and then do a bit of sewing on the side. It didn't occur to me that I could do anything else. And I was scared because I've got a mortgage, 2 kids at uni, money. So I decided not to go back to work. And I thought that would mean I'd get better straight away. But actually all it did is create the space for me to get worse first. So that's what happened. And then as I started to get better, I noticed that my relationship to my clothing changed. So my aunt had passed away in the same year and I missed her. And I had some of her clothing and some of her jewellery. And I found myself gravitating towards clothing that meant something to me in order to get me out the house. So I would wear her skirts or I'd wear her earrings or I'd wear something I'd nicked out my mother's wardrobe. So clothes that had a meaning as opposed to clothes that were trendy. And I started to talk about it on social media. I coined the hashtag Wear You're Happy and it started to take traction. Now you can't throw a stick without seeing an article about how clothes make you feel good and what colours, and about slow fashion and stuff like that. So I worked out that my favourite thing is to make relationships, particularly empowering women to wear clothing that they love, as opposed to fitting into something that society says we should wear. and it, which feeds into our insecurities about our bodies and how our bodies changed. And so I make bespoke clothing for women. And my attitude towards my life changed as well, in that I tend to say yes to things. I'm curious, and I tend to say yes to things that I feel passionately about or bring me joy, which means that I've ended up modelling, and I've ended up, you know, I got involved with the Loneliness Lab and doing craft moves, and I run a monthly online now craft circle, which is just, you bring one of your projects and you sit and we chat. That's basically it. And I still love teaching. So I now teach private sewing lessons. I do socially distanced lessons I have a studio in South East London. And recently there have been more people contacting me about the fact I talk about menopause a lot, because I feel that menopause is something that everybody should talk about, not just 50-year-old women, because it affects everybody, in that we all know someone who has either been menopausal or is menopausal, like our mothers, our aunts, and everybody needs supporting. So I talk about it a lot, and I talk about diversity in menopause, because if you Google the word menopause and you click images, you will get a sea of middle-aged, sad white women, and it's just not the case. So I went for a bit of a rant on Instagram, and it kicked up traction, and I thought, this is something I feel really passionate about. I have 2 girls. I don't want them to feel alone the way that I did when I started to go through menopause. And I think the more we talk about something, it takes away its power, because menopause isn't the end of the world. It's just another part of your life, and it's not something to be scared of. And women need supporting. Your mothers need supporting. Your grandmothers need supporting, you know? So I don't know whether that answers your question, but that's what I did.
It definitely does. I think it's really exciting how you both found things that empowered you, and then you've transferred those and offered those to lots of other people, and sort of helped them build that confidence in themselves. Obviously, Joyce, you with helping students get into like a really challenging university and feel that they deserve to be there and that they can get there. And then Karen talking about how you make women feel so much more comfortable in expressing themselves how they want to, and through what they wear and through what's important to them. It's really inspiring to hear, because I think there's so many students, we have things that we found that we are really passionate about, and it's hard to know how to translate those into a movement that other people can relate to and that can genuinely affect change. Because like you said, you know, when it starts off with a very small idea, it can be really scary to try and take a bigger step from not the conventional career path into really trying to turn it into something that you can have a good, positive, bigger influence with. So I guess my next question would be, what would your advice be for students or people who have found something that's really important to them and they want to turn it into a small business or a charity? Like, where would you suggest they start? Joyce, what would your suggestions be?
So this is at a point where actually somebody's realized that they need a career change, or they want to pursue something. Correct?
Yes.
Wherever they are, you know, whether they're in a job or they've just finished you know, their studies, or they've just come back from traveling, and that they need to go with the flow. First of all, I think that if you've come to that stage, congratulations, because it took me a long time. It took me 12 and a half years to kind of get there. But if you know what motivates you and you're in touch with that, I think that like Karen said, if you have a passion for something and you're not doing it, you will naturally gravitate there. You will naturally gravitate to doing it. So congratulations if you're there already. So I think that if you've got a business idea, hopefully it's not just about you. You know, it's of course we do something because we get something out of it personally, but if you're going to have longevity as a business, you need to have found a niche where which serves society. Yeah, so you've heard about Karen, you know, loneliness, talking about menopause. For me, it was, you know, there is something wrong with the education system, and what it is that students are very well taught to exams, and if you don't fit that mold, or if you can't pass the exam, then you know, it means that you're unsuccessful. You know, you're labelled a failure. And we come along and say, actually, there are different ways to achieving your goal. Being in touch with what motivates you is a good thing. The second thing is cultivating your talents. Yeah. So, and that's part of, I guess that's part of finding your niche and being motivated. So my advice is, once you've found your niche, you need to identify your strengths and weaknesses, okay, in terms of your dream jobs. So if your dream job entails you needing to do public speaking a lot in order to raise your profile, in order to do, so that's one thing. And thinking creatively, so that, because you're going to have to market your product. So what are the logical steps to achieving that? So if you don't have those things, then you are going to have to identify your weaknesses and find people who can help you, either by working with them, you know, or employing them, or you go and, you know, do things so officially on paper you demonstrate you're able to do it, and those are CV points for you as well. I think that being organized and structured as well enables everything to fall into place, and not everyone has that. And so, you know, in business you learn to put those structures in place, otherwise everything will go to pot. But once you've found those processes and systems, then it's a case of tweaking it so that it's more efficient year on year. And part of being organized and structured, I guess, is the whole thing and skill about planning, business planning, identifying how people's behaviors at certain times of the year, and then creating campaigns that actually speaks their language. So everything, I can't stress enough how everything is interlinked, and there are consequences to, of course there are consequences to everything, but there is strategic logic to being successful. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes. So then when you started Insight Outreach and really wanted to reach out to students and gain that awareness that you existed and you were there to help, how did you start? Like, what was the first step in trying to reach those students?
Okay, so first of all, I was doing a lot of this in my time under Insight Education. I think you would have a lot more traction. I knew that I'd have a lot more traction being a charity in getting into schools, because I was just I was wasting a lot of time trying to convince heads of sixth form to invest. And actually, that I cared less about that and cared more about actually running the program for the benefit of students. So founding a charity, and then, you know, creating a group of people who understood what I was trying to do and could help me, and then together it was much easier when you're part of a group with a goal and mission, working towards the same thing rather than doing it all yourself. So I guess that's how so in terms of strategic logic, it was setting up as a charity, establishing a group of people who I knew I could work with and who are driven to achieve the same mission and goals. And then there's a lot of information already publicly available in terms of schools and writing off to schools, building relationships with other young people's organisations, It is something that's being offered for free. So why not encourage them to kind of get the messages out there to those people who from lower socioeconomic backgrounds to actually apply for a once in a lifetime program that would help them get into the best universities. So that's what it is in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it than that, but everything kind of comes from your passion and the logic that comes with that.
Yeah, and I think going back to what you were both talking about earlier in terms of finding a niche, and a very valuable niche that you're passionate about, that you can really find people to pursue within. I think you both have quite an important and individual product in terms of Oxbridge is massively challenging and not accessible sort of on surface level to everyone. And as Karen was talking about, like accessing clothing that makes you feel good and makes you feel comfortable, and inspiring women to express themselves how they want to express themselves from a sentimental point of view. When you talked about sentimental value of clothing rather than what we get told we should wear because of what society says is attractive or trendy. So Karen, in terms of your business with Reddskin UK, how did you get that started? Because after you left teaching, you said that you you sort of were going through a difficult period, and what inspired you to really turn it into a business, and what were the steps to do that? Because that seems like a very big challenge, but a very amazing one to have reached where you are now.
Well, so I had a bag business, but it wasn't a business, it was a hobby. And I had been doing that. Basically, one of my daughter's schools was doing a summer fair, the annual summer fair, and they sent a letter home to parents saying, do you want a table for a tenner? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I had some Ankara African print fabrics, bright colours. I thought, what can I make that I can sell? I know, I'll make bags. So I made 6 bags of exactly the same design in 6 different colours. And my mum drove down and she made some coconut bread, which is from Barbados. And it was a lovely hot sunny day, and we had some music, and I had, blasting out some music, and I sold out, and I had a bit of paper and a clipboard, and I asked people to leave their email addresses and their orders, basically. And I sold them for far too little, now I think about it. I've thought about that a lot, actually. But it ignited something in me. It wasn't just, I can do this. It was, oh, okay. I really loved the buzz of people saying, oh my God, I love your stuff, was amazing. The buzz of making a little bit of money for myself that I didn't really need, because I had a full-time job, remember. So I had this thing. And then I started to do craft fairs. So if there was, like a Christmas fair or something like that in a local pub, or I started to look for them strategically. So I'd look on Facebook, I'd talk about it, someone would mention when I would do that. And then there's something called an artist trail that we have in our area every year. And someone bought, I think, a cushion cover from me, and she was organising it, so she asked me to get involved in that. So I would open my home and have my wares up at the weekend, and people would basically come into your house and have a nose and buy stuff. And one year I decided to make clothing. Now, I'd always shied away from making clothing because I'm not a trained fashion designer, so I'm not a pattern cutter. So I basically made it up as I went along, and I didn't know how to grade the different sizes. So I was worried that I'd be found out, imposter syndrome. But I made this clothing, and I wasn't pricing it very well. And one of my daughters said, Mum, you should do this. You should do this a lot. And I didn't know how to. So, but also I was still suffering from anxiety and depression. I'd left teaching by now, and I was losing the will to do the one thing that had kept me sane for a long time. So I then turned my attention on trying to get better first. And as I emerged from that, I wanted to do more than make stuff for strangers to put on a website. I wanted to create relationships with women and have those conversations about what happens when your body changes and how we can use clothing that fits us and makes us feel amazing to kind of move through the world. And so that's what I did. I worked with a business coach who kind of held my hand, and it was her suggestion that I stop making bags. I was quite adamant about wanting to do what I wanted to do, but I was scared. I have found that the things I'm most scared of doing are the things that I need to do. And I found that when I get a feeling in the pit of my stomach that I wake up in the morning and I can't get, or ideas that won't go away, they're the things that I go with. So Craft Moves was born that way. Menopause Whilst Black was born that way. My business was born that way. And I feel that, I mean, it's interesting because when Joyce was talking about planning and being organised, I was smiling because I thought, I don't see myself as an organised person at all. I wouldn't go as far as to say I'm chaotic, but I certainly have difficulty with planning because I move in a much more fluid, holistic way. But if I think about it, I'm very clear about my goals. I'm very clear about where I want to be in 5-10 years' time. I'm very clear about what I won't do and what I don't want to do. And my boundaries are tight, because when people ask me to do things that don't fit in with my overall vision or brand, I don't do them. I used to think I was chaotic. I realise I'm not chaotic. I don't fit what, business is very busy. Business is noisy. And you can watch all the webinars, see all the, read all the blogs, have many business coaches, sign up to all the mailing lists, all that kind of stuff. But eventually you just have to get on with it, and if your idea lights you up, no matter how many people are saying, what, you still need to do it, because there's a reason it's lighting you up, So I feel like I was in danger of I decided I wasn't a business person and I didn't have a business because my idea of a business was spreadsheets and business plans and suits, and they looked a certain way and did a certain thing. I'm not that person, but I run a business and I haven't lost my house yet. So it works for me. Yeah, I don't know what the question was.
No, you definitely answered it. So you've both talked about like overcoming that fear to just do what you really want to do. What skills do you think that you picked up throughout like the different roles that you've taken on before you've gotten to where you are now that have really helped, that you think students could aim to work on? I know that, Joyce, you talked about organisation and planning and finding your strengths and weaknesses, but are there any set skills that you've both found particularly useful in running your own sort of social enterprises? Joyce, do you have any extras that you'd like to add?
Yes, and one of the things that I thought about, which is actually clear and staring you right in the face, is the importance of just being personal, friendly and helpful. Because those things are things that you're not paid to do. So you going the extra mile are things that you're not paid to do, but people remember. Yeah. And it just creates a very positive business environment and atmosphere, and people will remember you and they will be willing to do the same for you as well. That's what I found. I think it's also important to cultivate good memory skills, and that's the basis of good networking skills as well. So if you can remember one thing about the person from the time you met before and bring it into conversation, it really does help, I think, business relations just generally, because it shows that you listen and care, and it's, I think, just generally memory skills is and for networking is key. And then something that I think you learn to do when you have job interviews is that if you're not getting through the interview, it's not because you don't have the skills, it's to do with technique. So what I mean by that is that in interviews, don't just launch into talking about why you want the job and, you know, being desperate to show why you're the right person for it. A very mature way would be to kind of come from the company perspective and just articulate how you understand, the problem, and why they're trying to hire a person to fit for that particular role. Just understanding where a company is coming from is a really good first step in an interview, and it's something which probably no one tells you about, but you just learn to do through trial and error. So those are the three things I would highlight, really.
Thank you. Karen, what advice would you give? What skills have you picked up along the way that you think are really useful now?
Me?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Karen.
Sorry. Okay. So I'm not the person to ask about interviews, because the last interview I had was in 2003. But I would say I wholeheartedly agree around how you make people feel. Don't burn bridges. Even if you work with someone or you come across someone and it isn't the right fit for you, you never know. People are always talking about you, you know. You never know what's happening behind the scenes, so that 5-10 years, I know that seems like a long time to some of you, but bear with me, down the line, people will say, actually, that person wasn't right for that job, but I met someone the other day and they, do you know what I mean? And people tend to remember how you made them feel, as opposed to what they might forget what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. So I think that's important. Certainly, okay, so my philosophy on life is that nothing happens without a reason, and that everybody you meet and everything you do leads you to where you're supposed to be. So it's layers upon layers upon layers. So you might think, you know, that what you're doing at the time doesn't make sense, or you might be bereft because this particular job, you know, you didn't get this particular job, but you didn't get that job because you were being prepared for something along the line which is bigger and better and is absolutely the right fit. So I don't see anything as a failure. I see everything as a lesson. Yeah, my biggest thing is about, I suppose it comes down to treating people the way you want to be treated, but also that whole idea of that going the extra mile. I pride myself on my service, in that people, when I teach sewing, for example, when you come to a sewing lesson with me, you get much more than learning how to sew, you know. And similarly, when I have consultations with my clients, even if they decide that the quote isn't for them, they'll talk to, someone will come to me, you know, weeks down the line and say, oh, someone came to you and I really liked what you did, and that kind of thing. It's just that little extra mile, and it feels, it's nothing to us. It's a little thing, but actually it means the world to people, because people like stories. They like to feel that there's a connection with you. You know, I was talking to somebody, a young lady who has just started a jewelry business. We were talking about Instagram and what a minefield it is, and how she doesn't like to feel salesy. And I said, that's because you're creative, because it means something to you. And what people love about brands that are, I feel, that are the most successful are brands that you feel they get you, and they'll only get you if you are truthful and you are honest, and you're not just showing the polished you, you're also sharing the downs as well. Yeah, that.
Yeah. So authenticity, yeah, just be.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Clearly,
And in fact, when I stopped worrying, when I left teaching and stopped worrying about knowing all the stuff and being found out, and just was truthful about the shit I'd been through, but also, you know, that not every, you know, people would look at certainly at my Instagram page and think I've got it all going on, but we know that we only show the good stuff. So sometimes it's also good to say, actually, I don't want to talk about that. Black Lives Matter recently was the most vulnerable I felt, in terms of not wanting to put up pretty pictures and wanting to say, actually, this is happening now and this is how I feel. And that has meant that I, again, feel more authentic. And I think that authenticity is not to be underestimated and cannot be faked.
Definitely. So it makes you, again, all the more like memorable, all the more individual, more relatable. Yeah.
Because you're true to yourself as well. You're not doing something, because you've got to live this life, you know, at the end of the day. So everything has to, you want to enjoy it at the same time. So if you're trying to be something else, what's the point, you know?
Very true.
I think, but the problem is, Karen, in the corporate sector and just jobs in general, everyone has to fit a mold.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And how do you kind of navigate that? It's a bit of trial and error, but I think at the end of the day, your advice on being who you are and being you is a really important bit of advice that I really could have done with back in the day.
Earlier on. That's why it's so exciting hearing from people like you both, because we really get that advice that, you know, we don't wait 12 years and find that. We hear that from you now, and we sort of realize how important these things are now. So then, leading on from authenticity and how important it is to pursue something that's really important to you personally, you both talked already about overcoming fears, but how do you separate yourself from, you know, your cause that's so personal and so important for you, if, you know, initially, like, the business isn't going so well, or the charity isn't getting the traction you want, and you don't feel like you're necessarily achieving the same, you know, hitting all of your goals? How do you move away from feeling like it's more of a personal failure and having that fear that it won't expand? How do you push through that, would you say, Joyce?
Wow, that's a very difficult question. What I would say is, to pursue something wholeheartedly, I think you need to have a great deal of self-belief, knowing that, you know, whatever the hurdles, you know that what you're doing is right. I certainly know that the whole idea of academic mentoring is needed much more to help students kind of think creatively, think on their feet. And these are skills which will help those transition points from high school into university, from university into jobs and beyond. So I feel that all the skills that I'm cultivating in the academic program that I started out 14 years ago is something that is useful, is something that's needed. And those skills will be kind of a lifelong benefit. I'm certain of that. And you know, the outcomes, we're just beginning as a charity. I started up the charity in 2018, and you know, we've had we're on the third cohort of students, and all of whom are kind of beginning to think in the ways that are needed to enable them to kind of step into university and be a success in the first year, because it's tough. You know, if everything was done for you at home and you're not, you know, you don't know how to live independently, well, having someone who advises you, an older brother or sister or mentor, in the way that we provide will help with that. And just kind of navigating what the likely challenges are going to be when you're at university is also just very helpful. Having someone there as an advisor. But sorry, I've just kind of gone off script a little bit.
That's all right.
In terms of how do you I think the whole thing of kind of of self-belief, being passionate about something means that I think that you're determined, that you're determined to push through no matter how much it takes, and that is going to help you achieve your ultimate goal, I think.
Karen, how did you push through when you were starting up your business and you have different rates of success? How did you maintain and keep going and get to where you are now?
I think that I am doing the opposite of what I was doing when I was teaching. So I put my mental well-being first and foremost. Nothing happens if I'm not feeling good. And so I have a routine. I have a morning routine, some of which is non-negotiable. It involves things like journaling, affirmations, creative visualization, which is basically imagining yourself doing the thing you want to do in the future. I will also say that I've always been someone who's used to doing things on my own. I watched my mother do it when my parents divorced. I watched a lot of strong women around me do it. So I assume that that's what you do. And that doesn't do us any service at all. So is being in networks or groups who get you. As you move, I feel that as I've moved through this life, I've found that I've left some friends behind. I don't mean that we're not friends. I mean that they don't get me anymore because I'm moving in a direction that isn't the same as theirs. So I find that if I'm around like-minded people, that might be other entrepreneurs, it might be people who are not necessarily fashion designers, but just people who are trying to do things on their own, or other, I don't know, when I was younger, single mothers, or I find that if you're talking to someone, just say, even if you have an issue in your head, opening your mouth and it coming out of your mouth doesn't necessarily solve the problem, but can make you feel better about it instantly. So sharing that, whether it's online, obviously it's more likely to be online than in person these days, and recognizing that as unique as you are, you're never, ever alone. So, so it's a combination of things that start with, if I'm not well, then I can't help anybody else. So I have to put myself first. And I have to eat properly on the whole, although I did finish half a tub of Haagen-Dazs last night, but we're not talking about that. Drink enough water, get enough sleep, so protect my energy so I don't entertain negativity. I don't watch the news anymore because I just don't. The news is going to get through anyway, that kind of thing. And it sounds airy-fairy, a bit bonkers, but it works for me. It works for me. And I know it works for a lot of other people as well, but you have to find your path. You know, some people, I'm an ex-dancer, so I do a lot of stretching and a lot of yoga, and I like to walk outside in nature and I like to hug trees, but that's me, you know, not everybody's like that. But it's certainly that self-belief, writing things down, saying I'm going to do something as opposed to wishing I could do it, listening to my gut feeling and not dismissing it and thinking it's a stomachache, recognizing that sometimes fear is actually excitement and your body can't tell the difference, you know, and putting myself first so I can help other people.
Yeah. That's really good advice. Thank you, both of you. So we're coming slightly towards the end now. So I'm going to ask you both some of the questions that we've had from attendees now. I know the time goes very quickly.
Okay.
So we've had some questions from people. So the first question is, when running a social enterprise, what's the best way to go about marketing the business without coming across as greenwashed or similar with other types of social causes? like people thinking that you're exploiting the cause for profit? What advice would you give?
That's a really good question. I think you talk about the benefit, the benefit of what you're trying to do for your target audience. I could talk for England about, you know, the our approaches and methods. I really do believe in it, because I actually what I'm trying to give young people is something that I never had when I applied to university. So I had to kind of learn and get by, you know, those critical thinking methods. I found that I was not the critical thinker that I was, that would have made studies so much easier, and for me to have had those in-depth academic conversations that I saw other people have in their tutorials. I felt that those were my limitations at university. I think that as my 18-year-old self, I wasn't ready. Whereas now, I think that with the help that I'm providing young people, they will be ready, more, you know, more prepared than I ever was when I went up for studies back in the day.
Yeah. And what advice would you give Karen?
I would. Sorry, I forgot the question. What was the question?
That's all right. How would you avoid coming across as though you are using a positive social cause for profit? So how would you really come across as genuine and market it positively without people thinking that you're not necessarily taking the cause seriously?
You have to believe in it. You have to believe in it. You can't really put passion into something that you're not passionate about. So you focus on the story. Often people who go into social enterprise ventures are people who really believe in what they want to do. And also you can do both. You can have a corporate job and also go into social enterprise. They're not mutually exclusive. It's not to be seen as like a sellout or a failure. Sometimes you still have to make your rent, you know. So I feel that if you believe in what you're talking about, it would be difficult to come across as someone who was taken advantage. We're very good, young people especially are very good at seeing through the bullshit. So I think that's the answer. That's my answer.
Yeah. So there's a question for Joyce. Is there any advice you would give to someone wanting to go into social policy or non-profit organisations?
Yes, so I don't know where this question came from and at what stage this person is in their studies, but I would assume that if they're still at university, there's plenty of opportunities at university to get involved in kind of charitable causes and in activities to give back to society. Getting yourself, well, you can do that and be a member that carries out the mission of a charity, or you could actually shape. And what I mean, they are slightly different things, because in order to shape, you need to get yourself into positions where you can actually do that, and it's generally part of the committees running student societies, creating policies and kind of giving direction, setting out what your charity aims to do. So I think there's a lot of opportunities if you are at university to do that. If you're at the point, I think at university and then outside, there are plenty of kind of interest groups, you know, where you can surround yourself with like-minded others, which is what Karen said, which could actually help you develop the skills needed to kind of do this more on a professional level. If you are at school, so in high school, then it would be a case of, there's things like Model United Nations, debating societies, but also just general volunteering and fundraising activities that you can get involved in. And the thing about that is that you just don't want to do it. You want to do it and do it well. So there's a bit of strategic thinking that comes in what you want to achieve, setting your goals, and then working out how you're going to get there. But yes, those extracurricular activities I think are really important for young people.
They're key. They're
Yeah.
key. Yeah.
Thank you. So this is a question for Karen. You mentioned that you love teaching, but certain problems in the education system made you want to stop working in schools. Is there any advice you'd give to students looking to become teachers, or anything you think we should be aware of?
Yeah, we need teachers. We absolutely need people to go into teaching. And I don't say not to go into teaching, but teaching is a different animal. And remember, I went into teaching in the bloody 80s. It's very different now. Mm-hmm. The advice is to just be aware of how you look after yourself. Teaching is a fantastic profession, but it is not valued in a monetary way or in media. So just be aware of that. So I would say, think about what you want to teach. Think about whether you're going to be primary or secondary. And there's a lot more technology these days, obviously, that can help you with teaching. And I would say surround yourself with people you can let off steam with. So when you go into a school, you would get someone who looks after you, get a mentor as well, but also making sure that you're part of a young person's teaching group, you know, like the new teachers, for example, the NQTs, or if you're if you're a person of colour, or you find someone who is part of your group that will understand you, so you start on the same level, you don't have to explain yourself. So yeah, but whoever's going to teaching, yeah, hat off to you, head wrap off to you.
And then I think, as a question to sort of wrap us up, for students interested in advocacy, specifically sustainability and slow fashion, but unsure of how to pursue this after university, what advice would you give for contributing to that industry and that sector?
Who? Anyone?
Oh, I think that's definitely your bag, Karen.
Well, okay, so I have 2 daughters, and the advice I always give to them is to not wait for things to land in your lap. So in terms of, I know some people are not into social media, but I wouldn't underestimate it, because when you Google slow fashion, for example, or you narrow your area, you will always find something, a blog that you can read, that you can comment on, someone you can email, a YouTube video that you can comment under, Instagram accounts that you can follow and comment under what they say. It also means that you're going to learn stuff as well. So in terms of, Joyce said about volunteering for the social side of it, but I would say never, ever, ever underestimate volunteering. We're kind of brought up in a system that sets us up to want to make money all the time and not do anything without money. And that, trust me, has its value for obvious reasons. But actually volunteering, one, in sectors that you love, but also doing things that, meeting people that you wouldn't normally meet. So I volunteer for Crisis every year. I'm part of the sewing service. And actually, I have met so many different types of people from all walks of life, people I volunteer with, but also homeless people as well, that kind of broaden your experience and broaden the way you view the world. So, in terms of, but back to slow fashion, in terms of finding out more things, definitely don't wait for things to come to you. Google is your actual friend, and the way to get people to notice you and to find out more is to comment on things. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, use those hashtags, that kind of thing.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I think as well,
someone's frozen.
I think as well, there's so much noise now online. It can be quite intimidating when you want to get involved in a new venture or really put yourself out there. It's just quite scary with everyone else seeming to be doing all these other ventures alongside you. But thank you so much. It's been so interesting to hear how you've both gotten where you are. Very impressive that you've done so many different things and really, really devoted yourself to something really important to you. It's really exciting because I think, a bit like Karen, you just said about money and that pressure to do something that's financially reliable when maybe that isn't all you want to do, and the suggestion of doing something that's really important to you socially alongside a corporate role. It's just exciting to hear about movements that are so important to you both, and see that as a possibility, a real possibility for after university. So thank you so much for all of your advice and for everything. Yeah, I think that wraps us up. So I hope you both have a lovely evening, and it's been really lovely talking to you both. I'm very grateful for you coming.
Thank you for having us. Good luck, everyone.
Of course. Thank you so much. I'm sure
nice to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye. Bye.